Hello and welcome to the Sacred Rainbow Current Global Online Summit, bringing together the multifaceted custodians of our planet and humanity to reveal deep truths, wisdom and tools to enable the guardianship of our planet for the future generations. Sacred protection, connection and the holding of earthly and cosmic light portals is potent to humanity's highest timeline ascension. My name is Kerry Bridget McCrory and I am your summit host and creator, airing from the Coniglen Valley in the Sperrin Mountains of Northern Ireland, Iru. My mountain is called Spatna and my river is the Coniglen Burn that gradually flows into the Owen Killiu River. Today, I am absolutely delighted to be joined by Irene Chong from the landscapes and city of Singapore. Would you like to say hello to everybody, Irene?
Well, hello, Kerry, and hello, everyone who's watching this. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, you're welcome. Now, Irene is the founder of Alignment Journeys, a business that was born out of a desire to fill the gaps in knowledge that aren't readily available in conventional educational systems. Through the Aligned Woman's Way, an art of creating space that fosters and facilitates feminine flow, Irene teaches women how to tap into and access their innate intuition and wisdom, the inner wellspring from which beauty and ease naturally flow. Irene is on a mission to empower heart-centered women to shine in their authentic radiance and beauty. As a coach, creative, and healer, she works with her clients to craft and create every aspect of their lives so they get to live the masterpiece that they dream of. Today, our topic is beautiful and it's called Treasure at the Rainbow's End. And I'm just delighted to dive into this with you, Irene. And what I'm going to ask is, in your work with women, what is the number one issue that comes up for them to heal so that they can reignite their radiant soulscape?
So once again, Kerry, thank you so much for inviting me to be a part of your summit. I really love the theme of it. And pre-recording, we were discussing some of the metaphors and ideas around rainbows and why I have such a strong personal connection with it. So let me try and weave this in order to answer your question. So I primarily work with women. As a woman myself, the number one problem, the issue that I think a lot of women today face, is what I call the wound of unworthiness, where so many women, because of the cultural conditioning of our times, we have forgotten our innate divine feminine essence. And so what happens is that we stay small, we don't own the gifts that we have. And I attribute that to, a large reason why this happens is because the society we live in is still largely operating from a hyper-masculine mode. It's steeped in toxic patriarchy. So there's a prioritization of masculine ways of doing. What ends up happening is that the feminine, the sacred feminine, it becomes sidelined. It's judged as inferior, that it's lacking in something. And so a lot of women, myself included, we have learned to adopt masculine ways of performing instead of leaning into our feminine gifts. And what these feminine gifts are, they are gifts of sensitivity, intuition, connecting to the wisdom of our bodies, our wombs, honoring our cyclical rhythms that are very much in line with that of Mother Nature. And it's as if, as women, we have been conditioned to feel unworthy of owning these gifts. We don't even see them as superpowers. So the work that I do in my one-on-one coaching, my group programs, my circles, it's all about guiding women to reconnect, to restore this trust in themselves. It's about restoring their sense of worth and worthiness, that they can rest and that they get to rest on the innate feminine intelligence that we have. And I know that your summit, the theme of it is about regaining our sacred landscape. And I love this term because when I think about it, what comes up for me is the inner terrain of our psyche, what I consider as the inner architecture of who we are. And the way I see it, the ascension of humanity, it really starts, it begins on the individual level when every person, men and women, reclaim the sacredness, the divinity of who we are, to not just, think of it as an idea, but to really embody and live this truth in our lives. So a huge piece of this is about coming back into balance, coming back into alignment with who we are. And I really do feel that all of us are on this alignment journey. That's the name of my company. And this alignment journey involves the integration of both our masculine and our feminine energetics. And for a lot of women who have lost touch with this access to our innate feminine intelligence, my hope is that in this time of great global awakening, more and more women will rise up and reclaim their power by tapping into these powerful gifts that we as women have.
Yeah, it's so important, Irene, that you're sharing this information, that you're putting it out there, because so many people aren't aware of this. So, what would you say, Irene, for yourself on a personal level? How have you embodied this?
Mm. Yeah, thanks for asking this question. And I can share a story that's related to rainbows. So
Lovely.
that's very in line with the theme of your summit. So this is a story about my name. And I think it succinctly encapsulates my own personal journey of healing. So as you can tell, I'm Chinese by ethnicity, and I grew up in a very traditional Chinese family. So when I was born, my parents gave me a Chinese name that's derived from my 八字. So that's Chinese astrology, and it's a way of calculating my life path. So what they'll do is they'll look at my birth year, my month, my day, and the characters in my name will contain a certain number of strokes that match my energy signature. So you may know this also that in Chinese culture, there's a strong belief in naming, in the power of names, be it people or things. You want the name to be auspicious. So my Chinese name is Xin Ni. There are two characters to my name. The first character, Xin, it means joyous, and it's associated with abundance, thriving growth that is joyful. Then the second character is Ni. And as you may know, Chinese words, they are traditionally pictograms. So they're very similar to Egyptian hieroglyphs. So the second character of my name is made up of two pictograms. The first is the pictogram for rain, and the second depicts the pictogram for child. So Ni is essentially a child of rain. But just to say, this character is not, it doesn't mean rainbow. It's actually more specific than that. It means a secondary rainbow. And you know the phenomenon when sometimes you can see two rainbows in the sky. So the character for my name refers to the second rainbow. And that makes a lot of sense because I was the second born in my family. I was the second daughter. So this particular word, it also means neon lights. So what it captures is the essence of bright light, vibrance, color. So joyous rainbow, or you can think of it as a joyous rainbow-like essence. Now, the thing was, as a little child growing up, way before cultural conditioning and family imprinting took hold, this was when I was just authentically expressing and being myself. I was often regarded by my parents and my adult caretakers as being too much. And I'm guessing that your audience who's watching this may be able to relate to this idea of being too much. When I went to school, I was often chastised for, not staying still, for not obeying instructions that didn't make sense at all to my natural being. And so in an attempt to control, To restrict my true nature, my parents decided to change my name. And they reduced the number of strokes of my second character. So the name, it's still pronounced the same, but they changed the character. And this character, interestingly enough, it carried the meaning of weak or small. So for much of my life, specifically my growing up years, I carried this name change with all the connotations of being joyously weak. And I was disciplined into becoming the sort of daughter, the kind of student, the law-abiding citizen that was expected of me. I learned to follow rules, even if they didn't make sense, even if they felt arbitrary and unjust, and they often were. But each time I stood up, I was put in my place, oftentimes quite violently. I experienced a lot of shaming. There was a huge pressure to conform, as you can imagine, in a lot of Asian cultures. So slowly but surely, I lost touch with my true self, with my sacred inner landscape. I lost my way. This core part of me that is connected with spirit and the divine. And I learned to behave, to perform in very much a cookie cutter way. And incidentally, a lot of this conditioning, it was about taking on masculine behaviors and suppressing my feminine qualities. My birth mother never bore a son. And again, in traditional Asian culture, there was a lot of pressure. It was seen as good to bear a male child. And so my mom harbored this desire and this hope, but she was not able to fulfill it. And so what happened was that she would push her daughters to take on masculine qualities. So I learned to push, to hustle, to compete, to achieve, and I discounted all my feminine gifts, my sensitivity, for example. I also favored, I was groomed to favor intellect and rational reasoning in lieu of my innate intuitive gifts. And then I also learned to push my body in a way that didn't honor my monthly flow. So the result was a disconnect and an imbalance in my energy. And then implicit in all this conditioning was a narrative that who I truly am is not good, like it's not good enough. So one example I'll give, this need for us as humans, and especially as women, to rest and turn within. When we are on our flow, when we are bleeding, this is actually an important time to retreat and go inwards. But I was not taught that. I was taught that I should still be able to do things, just like a man who doesn't have menstruation. I was taught that I was still expected to follow through and to push my way. And what that resulted was I became increasingly fatigued and burnt out. So this wound of unworthiness, it festered and it grew. It did lead me down a path of professional and financial success. So what people saw on the outside was that I was enjoying the rewards of doing everything that I've been trained to do. Academic success, career success. But then on the inside, it felt very numb because I lost a part of myself. I no longer felt alive. And what I lost, I felt, was that vibrancy, that color of who I remembered being when I was a child. Long story short, I managed to embark on a path of recovery that took years. And ultimately, I realized that the key to it all was to reclaim, was to own the innate feminine wisdom that I was born with, that all women essentially have by virtue of being womb carriers. So I call this discovering the pot of gold after a long journey of seeking, of traveling. Like this is the treasure at Rainbow's End. There is an alchemy that takes place when we can transmute the lead of programming and cultural conditioning into the gold, the purity of who we truly are as spiritual beings, having a human experience here on earth. And so today, it's my joy, it's my honor to share this with the women that I get to work with today.
Yeah, that's quite an incredible journey, Irene, that you have been on. just it's so immense that the wound that is there of the divine feminine, of our gifts being just like you say, not valued, but being quashed. And how old were you? Do you remember when your parents changed your name, that the character in your name? Do you know that?
Yes, this was when I was in kindergarten, so around the age of 5 or 6. And so when I entered primary school, secondary, and tertiary, I carried this name with me for over a decade. And it wasn't until I started embarking on my healing process, and it wasn't intentional. I didn't consciously even think that I needed to change my name. But along my healing journey, through the energy medicine that I was doing, the regression work, the astrology, and all of that, it suddenly became clear that there was a disconnect between my name, between who I call myself. There was an energetic frequency that I was tuning in, and it felt that there was a cognitive dissonance. The more I was stepping into who I truly, authentically am, the more I felt that this name, there was something off about it. And so then it struck me as I went deeper into my own Chinese culture, and I went and explored more. Um, Astrology was one, so Chinese astrology was a part of it. Then it became clear that I needed to reclaim, to re-own the name that I'd originally been given, and which does encapsulate a core part of who I am. Um, I love rainbows. Even my English name, Irene, which means peace in Greek. I remember reading out the etymology of my name when I was young, and there's the association with the dove, the whole story of Noah's Ark and the sighting of the rainbow. So all these connections. And then even in astrology, we're talking about this pre-recording, the the concept of Chiron as the wounded healer. And he has often been given the name of the Rainbow Bridge. Right? He was given this title. And I really see the rainbow as the bridge builder, the essence of hope and inspiration that we can all aspire to. Um, and also just to say, because I'm also an astrologer, Chiron features very largely in my chart. And I see this as being oftentimes in the reading that I do with my clients, when I look at their Chiron, there's a huge indication of the kind of medicine and the gifts that they carry, but they haven't been able to own because it's something that they've been out of touch. It's wounded them. And it always comes back to that core wound of not feeling worthy of owning or stepping fully into your gifts.
Yeah. And I love your background because you're reminding me when I see you of like a halo around you, but it's sort of like the Kuan Yin, which is in your culture in the Far East, the embodiment of the divine feminine as well. And you might be surprised, but that's your whole energy and essence puts me in mind of that as well. And that energy would also be about from our wounds and our hurt, cultivating the pearl from within.
Wow, thank you so much for that beautiful reflection, Carrie.
Oh,
And
you are
yes,
this,
yeah.
yeah, like just look at that beautiful turquoise, and it's just like you are really embodying and taking back. And thank God you are, Irene, leading that path for so many women that, that this is ours. We're only being true to ourselves when we fully embrace all the beauty of ourselves that has been like wiped from us.
Yeah, and coming back to the idea of Chiron, when I share my story, it's because I feel that there's something universal in it, time and time again, with the women who are drawn to work with me. They share very similar stories of feeling rejected for their feminine sensitivity, their intuition, all the gifts that they have. And it is this journey back to wholeness, returning and reclaiming their feminine superpowers. Right? This is the journey that so many women today are on. Because the more we awaken to who we truly are, there's this knowing that we can no longer deny or suppress these divine feminine qualities. And, early on you spoke about the quality of compassion. I feel that that is so important, be it the essence of Kuan Yin or with Chiron, when we need to go within to excavate and dig deep, to uncover the wounds that have kept us small and hidden. Oftentimes there can be a lot of shame, a lot of judgment. You could have started out externally, but then we've learned to internalize all the shame, the guilt, and we have to unlearn and then relearn a new way of being. And we have to do that through compassionate curiosity, to understand, to really, really fully comprehend why it was there in the first place. And so I feel that my personal journey, when I take the helicopter, the larger view, I can see that this is a journey that I needed to embark on so that I can do the work that I'm doing today. Because if I didn't understand, if I hadn't undergone this journey myself, then I wouldn't be able to guide and support the women that I work with today.
Yeah,
So thank you for that reflection.
yeah, I understand that. Like, we really and truly, we can only go with people how far we have come ourselves. It's part of the journey that you realize as you grow. So why is it so important at this time for women to step up and fully own their power? And how can they be of service in humanity's ascension?
Mm, this is such a juicy question. And this is really the crux of why you're doing this summit, isn't it? We are living at such an exciting time on planet Earth. There is a revolution underway where collective humanity is awakening. So a huge part of this, and many of your speakers will echo this, I'm sure, but a huge part of humanity's ascension involves the restoration of the sacred feminine. So women in particular. Now, I don't want to discount the men because I just want to say that this is the path that I have been personally called on, which is to serve and support women. And, earlier on, I talked about the problem that we're seeing today. The result of toxic patriarchy is that it has distorted and abused the feminine. So the antidote is to restore the sacred feminine to its rightful place, where it is not inferior to, because we are not meant, it's not meant to have this hierarchical position of power over, which is a very toxic masculine way of looking at things, power over instead of power with. So what we're really looking for here is an integration of both masculine and feminine. So especially for women, in order to step up and fully own their power, to be of service, to contribute to the collective awakening of humanity at this pivotal time, what needs to happen is for women to step up and claim their feminine gifts. So the forgetting, the antidote is to now remember, to bring back parts of themselves that they've forgotten or lost along the way, and then to learn how to access them, how to use them, how to tap into them, how to flow. And this is what I call like the aligned woman's way, the path of feminine flow, where we take on the masculine strengths that we've cultivated, and then we integrate that with the feminine gifts of intuition, sensitivity, a listening to our bodies, our bodily wisdom. And because your summit, it talks about sacred landscapes, internal and external. What I always emphasize is that before we look outwards, there first needs to be an internal alignment. So working within to align the energetics so that we get to manifest, we get to take action and create the desired reality that we aspire, that we desire to see.
Yes. Uh-huh. Oh, it's a journey. Can you share more, Irene, about your signature program, Treasure, and how it supports women in actualizing their fullest potential?
Yeah, thank you for this question. And earlier on, you brought up the idea of the pearl, and I love it because I use that as a metaphor for treasure. So the pearl, if you think about it, there's an alchemical process. And really, there is so much inspiration that we can draw from Mother Nature just by considering how a pearl is formed. There's a transmutation, an alchemical transformation that takes place, where something that's seen as a grit, a piece of dirt, right? The oyster changes it into something that is so precious and luminous. And pearls have always been seen as something that is feminine. There is this glow. It's associated with Cancer, the Divine Mother, and pearls are always seen as they carry this quality of the soft feminine. There's something so luminous and beautiful about it. So I use the metaphor of the pearl in treasure. And in this program, it's my signature program, which I put out this year. And there are 3 stages to it. So if you allow me, I'll just touch briefly on what each stage is all about. And that's really the process of shining your gifts, turning your wounds into your greatest gifts. So the first stage is to excavate. This is where we really go into the wounds that you've been carrying, the core wounds. For a lot of women, it's the wound of unworthiness. So as part of this stage, we excavate all the mental programming that we've taken on, especially in our formative or younger years. And we learn to, we shed light on it, and we learn how to transmute that. We learn to shift that first with mindful awareness, and then by bringing on conscious language. So I use cognitive psychology in this. And then I also bring in astrology, and we look at Chiron, that the symbol itself, it looks like a key. And I really see that as the key to digging out the buried treasure that every person has. So that's also part of the free gift that I have for your audience. It's a free 20-minute teaching. But in the program itself, I go a lot deeper. I cover both the astronomy, the mythology, the psychology, and the astrology of it, because there is something so powerful about this archetype, the archetype of the wounded healer, this part of us that causes a lot of pain and potentially a lot of suffering as well. But until we learn to meet it and embrace it with what I call chironic consciousness. So this is where we bring on both the rational intellect as well as this feminine quality of intuition. And there's a third way, a synergistic blend of coming into a clear knowing of who we are. So in the program itself, I take the participants through a guided journey. It's similar to a shamanic journey where you enter into an altered state of consciousness. But the whole idea around this is that you first learn to face your shadow. So in the gift offering that I have, I go into this concept of the shadow in greater detail. Right now, what I'll just say is that Carl Jung, in his work, has often posited the idea of the golden shadow. So oftentimes when we think of shadow, we see it as something dark and scary, something that we don't want to approach, that we want to get away from. It's usually something in us that's hidden or repressed. So the idea of the golden shadow is that there are these powerful gifts that we have, but we are afraid to step into it. We're afraid to claim the brilliance and the magnificence of who we truly are. And so it remains hidden, it remains repressed, but that's actually a golden shadow. So in working with Chiron, we learn to compassionately, lovingly, gently excavate and dig deep to uncover what your gifts, what your unique gifts truly are. So we have to go beneath the layer of wounding. We have to face it with gentleness and compassion in order to excavate it. So that's stage 1, unpacking all of that. And then we move on to stage 2. Now that we have this knowing, this clarity, and this awareness, we work towards elevating. How do you elevate your state of being? So there is the energetics of it, the energy body. So we look at the chakra system, but we also look at the physiology of it. So what I find time and time again with the women that I work with is that when they want to step into their power, when they are ready to reclaim their gifts, there's often a contraction that takes place because stepping out, shining, that can often feel very vulnerable. It's risky, and it often feels very threatening to our nervous system because it puts us at risk of, judgment from other people, or it exposes us to more criticism, not always welcome. So in order to be more visible, to step up and shine, we first need to calibrate our system. And because the world that we're living in, every single human being experiences trauma in some form or other. And by trauma, I mean the experience of overwhelm and stress, not so much the actual event. It's not the external event, but rather an internal experience that causes our nervous system to shut down and dysregulate. So a lot of the healing has to come from the body. So in stage 2, we go deeper into the somatic healing of the body. So I consider this to be a very holistic program. I've essentially put in everything that has enabled me to get to where I am today, from a place of nervous system shutdown, huge nervous system dysregulation because of what I experienced as a child growing up, a lot of dissociation with my body, a fear of stepping out. I stayed hidden for as long as I could until I no longer could ignore the call of spirit to step up and serve. So the cognitive piece, the neuroscience elements, and then now there's a somatic piece. And then when we move on to stage 3, once we have learned to calibrate our system so that we can remain in an elevated and open state, the final stage is to equilibrate, i.e. to maintain this expanded state, because on our journey, we're going to continue to evolve and grow, which means that we'll continually be stretched. We'll have to keep expanding. And so every time there's an expansion, there will also be a resultant contraction. So the final stage, and I consider this to be a highly important one that's not often taught, which is that once we've arrived at our goal or our destination, there is actually still more ahead. How do we carry on instead of remaining stuck or stagnant? How can we equilibrate our system? So here I also go more into the somatics and the energetics of how to do this in a way that feels safe, easeful, and accessible. And all this is grounded in the energetics of the divine feminine. So my approach is very much guided by the sacred feminine. I utilize sacred geometry, for example. So we talk about the seed of life, the flower of life, and the fruit of life. And all this corresponds with the 3 stages in the program. I love using this sacred geometry because to me, it really underlines how we are connected to a conscious intelligence, a cosmic consciousness that many of us tend to forget as we go about and navigate our 3D lives. So this accessing of a higher consciousness is key in the work that I do. And then also the idea, right? The seed, the flower, and the fruit. There's this beautiful metaphor of the reproductive, the creative cycle, that as women, we have a natural connection to and with. So all that to say that treasure, it's both a verb and a noun. It's about supporting women in learning how to treasure who they innately are. This heals that wound of unworthiness that I was talking about. And it's also a noun because they are a treasure. And it's about supporting them to own, to see themselves as the treasure that they truly are, that they are a pearl, and that this pearl has been hard won. It's a result of transmuting the grit, transmuting the lead into gold. And the way I see this, especially in the teachings of Chiron, I allude to this. There is this journey that we are on, and the bridge or the alchemical change from lead to gold, from grit to pearl. This is the journey that we are all on. And it's a beautiful one, right? The journey itself is a very healing, pleasurable, and joyful one when you have the right guidance, when you have the right support. So that, in a nutshell, is what treasure is all about.
Yeah, it's a very in-depth but beautiful journey that, so many of us as women, we can't do this on our own. We need this guidance. Very much my own healing journey has been guided by a lot of other women as well. And like what you're saying as well about, the aspects where we have to feel again, all them things we've locked away. So we have to feel again to release, acknowledge that part of ourselves, the feeling and the releasing. And then there was another stage that you were saying, oh I that bit we all love that, where we're feeling uncomfortable with ourselves and what we're doing, but we embrace it. We push past it anyway, but so much more if we're within community with people. We're all holding each other. It's so precious. And then that final part where you're saying, how we how we live this whenever we've done the work, how we embody it, how we be at a deep
Yeah,
peace with ourselves, going back to what's in your name, that peace, how we be in that deep peace with
yeah.
ourselves. Like this work, Irene, it is just it's so worth it to do it. I would really encourage people to sign up to Irene's program because you'll shine from it. And
Thank
this
you
is
so
the
much
good.
for that. Yeah, thank you so
Uh-huh.
much for that reflection. And if I may, I just want to add on to a couple of things that you highlighted. I really appreciate you mentioning the idea of community because this is a program. It's not a self-paced course that you can take. I mean, there are video teachings and activations and all of that, but a huge gift. And I would say much of the value is the coming together. So I include both one-on-one and group elements in this program because exactly as you say, especially for women, we are relational beings and the feminine is relational. It's really important to come together in community, to gather in circle. A lot of the magic happens when women are witnessed, when they're able to have opportunities to share and be witnessed in a safe space, when they can open up and be truly vulnerable without any judgment or criticism. This kind of sacred container, I feel, is what's missing in a lot of society today. And so when I was facilitating circles for the past year, time and time again, the feedback I received was a lot of women, they just didn't feel safe in opening up, in sharing. They hadn't felt safe to be around other women. There's so many feminine wounds that as women, we have experienced and encountered the wounds of, when I think about the wounds of unworthiness, when they're allowed to fester, what tends to happen is that there can be a lot of competition, unhealthy, toxic competition that results in envy, in jealousy, in a lot of passive aggressive behavior, a lot of manipulation because we're not able to be direct and step into our gifts. And so what happens is that there's a lot of underhanded, manipulation that takes place. And so, as a woman myself, I grew up in a family of other sisters. There were these feminine wounds that I experienced at a very tender and young age. And so, in these circles, time and time again, these women would share that whilst in the past, they had never felt safe in opening up. The container in the sacred circle enabled them to show up on camera for the first time, to speak up for the first time. And they found it to be very healing and therapeutic. And so in this program, it was very important to have this piece where as women who are journeying together on this path of awakening, there are not many of us yet. And so we need all the support we can get, especially when we are being called to lean into discomfort. It's really impossible to do this alone. And so that's why I created this program. There was also something else that you spoke to that I wanted to also reflect on. Um, Oh, yes, which is this feminine principle of softening. A lot of times when people think that when they sign up for a course, there's a lot of doing. And of course, there is action that needs to be taken. But really, what is special about treasure is the divine feminine approach, which is to say that it is the sacred container where you are learning as a woman, you're learning how to receive. So much of the time, we have been conditioned, we have been taught to give, to put out, and then we forget that it's at the expense, that there needs to be a reciprocal flow. So, a lot of the times when people join this container, what they're really relearning is the feminine flow of reciprocity, and they're learning to receive, they're learning to recalibrate their system where they shift into a different state altogether, a state that is softer, that is more open. And in this state of expansiveness, they can experience more ease, more grace, more flow. It's not about pushing or striving, which is how we've often been taught, right? That we've got to put in the effort in order to gain. That's a very masculine way of looking at things. So this is really what I see as a paradigm shift. It's not so much a way of doing, it's more a way of being. And I find this to be at the core, at the heart of what treasure is all about.
You couldn't have put that more beautifully, that it's about receiving. Like that's, what it is for women to receive instead of it never being returned to them. You've just hit it on the head there, Irene. Beautifully put. So I really want to encourage everybody to click into Irene's free gift on the teaching on Chiron. And it is a lovely gift. I'm on the Chiron journey, return journey myself, and it's just so informative and a really beautiful gift. Thank you so much for taking the time and putting that together the way you did, Irene. The links to Irene's work and websites will be included below on the speaker's page. And Irene's website, I just want to remind you, it is www.alignmentjourneys.com. And you can find out a lot more about Irene and all the work she does with people around the world through her website. So just to say thank you so much, Irene, for taking the time and coming on to the summit today and sharing this really pivotal information and guidance from your heart that you're sharing out in the world. Thank you so, so much.
And thank you for the work that you are doing, Carrie. My hope is that for the audience who's watching this, that you'll be inspired to embark on your own journey of expanding, reclaiming, and really owning your gifts so you can step up and shine more fully in your light.
Thank you.